China has so many power plants that have been built and are being built. I don't think people quite realize this. I posted on my X account just the graph of U.S. power generation versus China power generation. And China power generation is looks like a rocket going to orbit, and U.S. power generation is flat.
Right.
So I think by the end of this year, China will have about 2.5 times the power output of the United States, and it's headed towards maybe 3 or 4 times the power output of the United States.
It's funny when you think about China. I mean, EVs, autonomous. We talked about batteries, solar, power generation. By the way, even biotechnology recently. I don't know if you saw Pfizer's licensing cancer drugs.
Yeah.
They seem to be, I don't know, I'll ask you the question. Are they ahead of us in certain areas that are important?
I mean, the United States still has an advantage in breakthrough innovation, so it's the United States, and I think it's somewhat of a cultural thing, which is that to have breakthrough innovation, you have to question authority. Fundamentally, you break through, you're questioning the conventional wisdom when you do a breakthrough innovation.
Right.
In China, that don't generally like to question the authority, or it's not as encouraged as it is in the U.S. Questioning authority.
But they do seem to be good at finding something and then making it better.
Yeah, I do want to emphasize that the sheer number of smart, talented people in China who work very hard is amazing. The amount of the sheer quantity of talent. I'm an admirer of China's capabilities. I think most people outside of China do not understand the power of China. It really is something special.
And I think that's the exact point that a lot of China bulls out there are talking about. And this is something they're saying that the Western world doesn't really understand, the talent factor. And even when it comes to AI, he seemed to hesitate a little bit when the question from David Favor was really trying to compare the U.S. and China when it comes to how embedded AI is. And he instead decided to talk about how it's difficult for Chinese companies to perhaps say no to the authorities because of the cultural difference and so on. But I think, with that, I think he was trying to insinuate that there is that amazing capabilities that he is appreciating about the Chinese economy.
China. Yeah, indeed. We'll get more about. We'll talk more about China in just a bit. But the U.S. side of it and energy. I mean, the fact of the matter is the U.S. is finally now energy independent. Right, the resources are there. Right? They're net exporters of energy, right? It's more the ability to convert that energy, whether it's oil or shale or whatever, nat gas, right, into power and electricity. I think that's where the U.S. Is clearly falling short of China. And China, as we all know, is leading the world in renewable energy, right? Wind, hydro, solar, et cetera, and also building a heck of a lot of nuclear plants. But on to the point about Musk saying that, they're cranking out a lot of degree holders and, filing a lot of scientific patents. And there's just so many smart people, so much gray matter in China. But, innovation has its limits when you're in a system where you can't buck authority. I want to push back on that because what a lot of people say is, even in that kind of top-down communist system, right, there's a lot of decentralization. Right? Xi Jinping and the Politburo may say whatever they want, right? But it's going to be down to the provinces to actually execute. And I think that's where, as we saw with EVs and we're likely to see with AI as well, they pretty much make their own decisions. In fact, historically, that's been one of the biggest problems for the central government, controlling the provinces. Right?
I think the question boils down to when the control is exercised. So I think over the past years, and EV is a good example of that, and that this is actually the point that Louis Vincent Gove was talking about on our air just a few weeks ago, that they let them go. The private companies do your thing, figure it out, and we will let you innovate. At some point, the central government would come in and say, okay, so there are too many of you, perhaps you can consolidate with A and B and the C and D, EV, and then we have actually a very powerful influence in this particular sector. That has been the China playbook, and
yes.
perhaps that's what's been happening, not just EVs, but in other sectors.
And I tell you what, there's nothing that generates innovation and new ideas than that kind of competition. It is brutal. It is cutthroat. And you're right. There are times when the Chinese government steps in and says, okay, look, this is messy, inefficient. Look, you merge with you, merge with you. Other times, the Chinese government just stands aside and goes, okay, so you didn't make it. You failed. Too bad. Right?
Yeah.
They're waiting. They're letting these guys fight it out. And they're waiting to see, okay, so who's got what it takes to make it? And, okay, so you did, despite all the challenges. So, all right, you deserve to be a champion.
Exactly. So Louis Gov was talking about how because it's a communist system that it's not going to work economically. That is the misconception that he wanted to point out, and maybe that is really the theme that we're going on about. I do want to have a line on power transformer story because Elon Musk was talking. I thought it was really cute when he was saying transformers, needing transformers for transformers. Anyways,
I get it.
Power transformers, the top exporting countries to the United States. Get this. Mexico, that was a surprise to me.
Okay.
South Korea, China, and Germany.
Oh.
Yeah, who's at an advantage? I think it's very interesting to look at this massive rally that we've been seeing in South Korea's power transformer sector. They had a massive rally on the U.S. export story. Does this continue with Elon Musk himself talking about how there is that shortage coming up?
Don't know. Watch this space.
Exactly.
All right.